All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our next installment of our Solar One webinar series. We are so happy to be able to bring you all another amazing conversation with industry partners and industry professionals here in New York City. So for today's topic of this webinar is going to be about carbon neutrality in New York City. All with the focus of this sustainability goal that New York City has to become carbon neutral, hopefully in the next 30 years. And so we're going to be talking with two professionals who literally on the day-to-day basis work towards helping New York City achieve this goal. And they're going to be able to answer questions and kind of give more information about the work that has been happening and will happen in the future about reaching this sustainability goal of helping New York City become carbon neutral by the year 2050. So on this call with us today, we have myself. My name is Amy Colorado. I am the program manager for the Green Design Lab at Solar One. We also have our clean education intern, Alex, who's joining us. And then we have our two panelists who I will allow them to introduce themselves. So you can go ahead. We'll start with Christine.
All right. Oh, sorry, I was unmuted.
Just a quick introduction.
So it's quiet. Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Christine Johnson. I work for New York City Department of Education's Office of Sustainability on a broader sustainability team. And the primary work that I do there is leading our efforts to deploy clean energy across the public schools. Very exciting stuff, and we use those projects, those clean energy projects, predominantly solar, as a catalyst for education, working in partnership with Solar One. So I'll share more about that as we move forward throughout this webinar.
Thank you. Oh, so Milka, if you can introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. So good evening, everyone. My name is Milka Rodriguez, and I'm currently a policy advisor at the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability, where I helped the city deliver its vision for a zero carbon future that serves and protects all residents. I'm pretty much I consider myself a native New Yorker, even though I was born in Dominican Republic. And currently, with the Mayor's Office, some of the work that I've been doing is creating program strategy documents for a building energy efficiency program that's going to be launched very soon in the next quarter in central Brooklyn and in northern Manhattan. But that's only one aspect of the program, but it's going to actually cover all 5 boroughs. And that specific aspect of the program is focusing on the smaller buildings that need more assistance with being able to get ready in order to do energy and water conservation work. And I also do some kind of like research around workforce development in the energy sector and how to include more minority and women-owned businesses in the energy sector, as well as youth engagement through our NYC Accelerator internship program. That's a collaboration with the CUNY Building Performance Lab, and it's available for bachelor's and graduate students in the CUNY system.
All right, great. So as you can tell, we're going to have a great conversation in the next couple of minutes that we have together with us all. Just some logistics for our audience members for today. So we are delivering this webinar to you using the Zoom webinar feature. So you may have noticed that all of your cameras are turned off and you are all muted automatically. You are welcome to very much interact with us panelists and ask questions, clarifying questions. If you have anything maybe that if you want more information on what someone said, you're welcome to write in the chat. That will be able to be seen by all 4 of us that are on this call. We very much, if you have a specific, if it's actually like a question and not like a comment that you want to make, we welcome you to please use the Q&A feature on Zoom. So it should be found at the bottom bar of the Zoom window that you're looking at. So if you have any questions, we will try to get to them before the end of this webinar. But seeing as our conversation goes, we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. This webinar is also being recorded, so we will be sharing out the recording of this webinar afterwards, so that you may rewatch it, have it on record, share it with any of your peers, for example. And we will be providing contact information as well as any links or anything of that sort that we show throughout our conversation today. We will also be providing that for you as well. To get us started for our conversation for today, carbon neutrality is, and this goal that we have in the city of New York. Like I always say, I'm myself, I'm a native New Yorker, and us New Yorkers, we go harder, we go home. And so with this very ambitious goal of being, we're one of the largest cities in this country. It's a very ambitious goal for New York City to want to become carbon neutral in the next 30 years. So there's lots of work being done by lots of different city agencies, organizations, individuals, youth, students, all these activists that are all working towards making New York City a better, greener city. And so to start us off for our conversation, we're going to be having, we're going to have our two panelists share a little bit of more background information, and they will be sharing their screens to show some visual aids to kind of help get more of a background information on the work that has been done already and will be done in the future. So we're going to start off with Milka, who will give us some more background information directly from the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. And the Mayor's Office of Sustainability is the city agency essentially drafting up the sustainability initiatives and goals that then get disseminated to other city agencies like the Department of Education here in the city. So we're going to start off with Milka, who's going to give us a little bit of background information, share some slides with us, and then we'll switch over to Christine, who will then dive in a little bit more specific of how are these policies and different goals and initiatives that are being passed on a city level from the mayor's office, how is that being implemented specifically within the Department of Education? All right, so we're gonna pass it off to you, Milka. Thank you everyone for joining. And again, if anyone has questions regarding, relevant to what's being said, please write them in our Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. Can you guys see the screen? Okay. All right, perfect. So like I've said, my name is Milka Rodriguez. I work for the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability. And one of our main goals is actually transforming New York City's buildings for a low carbon future. So as you may or may not know, climate change is an existential threat, but we do not accept that it is inevitable. So in this current administration, it's actually one of the main priorities of the city of New York. And it's something that the mayor always wants feedback on, and it's something that he always wants us to report back on. So this isn't something that doesn't have any support from the administration. And now with this new presidency, there's going to be even more support for a wide variety of different climate change and building energy efficiency initiatives. So here at the New York City Mayor's Office, we're a team of architects, data scientists, policymakers, storytellers, and city planners. We also have a variety of different fellows through the Environmental Defense Fund and interns that we place through our CUNY internship program. And we also coordinate with students that are like in the social work field in order to do or assist us with some of like research related to sustainability. So the reason I bring that up is because there's many different ways to be a sustainability professional. Don't think that you only have to be an architect or an engineer or have a very highly technical background. You can be a sustainability professional, even as a filmmaker, for example. And we have a variety of different people in our office with all different skill sets. Some who are native New Yorkers, some who are from like outside of New York City, from other states. So we're a very diverse group of people looking at sustainability initiatives from a variety of different angles. So what we believe here in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability is that climate change affects everyone. Its impacts are not equally shared, and we must take bold action. That's also, detailed in our sustainability plan, which you can look up online on our website. And regardless of background or circumstance, all New Yorkers deserve the same opportunities to thrive. One of the things that we've been looking into a lot lately is how, sustainability from an equity and environmental justice angle, as well as sustainability as a way to contribute to the local economy. In that way, being able to support New Yorkers from a wide variety of different backgrounds. So our charge right now is to lead a just transition to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And the way that we're doing that is through our sustainability plan, One NYC 2050. This sustainability plan pretty much has a variety of different components to it, such as healthy lives, efficient mobility. So that's like sustainable transportation, as well as improving education around sustainability, as well as being able to properly support our infrastructure. So we're definitely looking at sustainability from a wide variety of angles. And so this is kind of like just this diagram is pretty much showing New York City's pathway to carbon neutrality. We have delineated like near-term actions, as well as the actions that we need to take in order to achieve our goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. In the near term, we can do things like transition to 100% renewable electricity in the city's operations, building energy performance mandates, which there are a lot of now, which I will get into a little later, as well as like electronic vehicle infrastructure and zero waste in the city's government operations. And looking, much further, long-term plan, just ending our reliance on fossil fuels, which is something that we're always looking to do, and ensuring 100% clean electricity resources. That's definitely the pathway that New York City wants to take, and we're slowly implementing different things in order to get there. So just be sure that we're definitely going to get there at some point. It's going to probably take a few decades. So moving forward, a livable climate, which is one of the things that we're trying to really promote here. New York City, as a result of the greenhouse gas effect, it's really hot. And when you look at this, you see that 66% of buildings actually contribute to a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions in the city. 30% of those are coming from transportation and 4% from waste. So a lot of the work that we do actually focuses on getting the buildings to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and getting them to be as sustainable as possible. So these are just some key findings about building energy use. So as you can see from these graphs, the energy that's used for space heating and domestic hot water production actually make up the majority of the building-based emissions. And as you can see, a lot of those emissions are actually coming from in the multifamily sector, specifically for space heating. And a lot of the work that we do is actually with the multifamily sector. And we're always trying to broaden our reach in that sector because, there's also like low and moderate income communities that don't necessarily always have the funds in order to actually do these energy retrofits to get their buildings up to the standard that we're trying to push the city to move towards. Another key finding is when you look at these figures, 82% of the building count in New York City is actually predominantly 1 to 4 family homes. But when you see where the greatest share of greenhouse gas emissions is coming from, it's actually coming from the commercial and multi-family buildings, which is something a lot of people don't realize. We actually have more homes in New York City than we do commercial and multi-family buildings, but it's the larger buildings, obviously, that are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. Another thing here is that fossil fuels dominate energy use and greenhouse gas emissions from New York City's buildings. So as you can see, about 46% of the building-based emissions by fuel type are actually coming from natural gas. New York City did a lot of work to reduce our dependence on oil through our clean heat program, which was extremely successful. And the programs that we're going to be releasing soon, which I was talking about earlier, is actually building off of the momentum from the clean heat project. So we're clean heat, try to transition everyone off of number 6 oil to a cleaner fuel or natural gas. And now we're trying to transition the city towards electricity. And hopefully in a few decades, we'll be able to transition the city over to predominantly renewable energy. So we had a convening of this building technical working group several years ago. And some of the main what they did was they conducted a comprehensive analysis of energy use in New York City's buildings. And the final report pretty much recommended a variety of requirements and programs in order to improve energy efficiency in buildings. And all of that was actually integrated in our sustainability plan, the New York City's roadmap to 80 by 2050. So I wanted to highlight this specific building, Department of Education. It's actually a net zero elementary school in Staten Island, which this is an example of the city's work to actually try to get some of their municipal buildings up to par. So not only is the city trying to get multifamily, commercial, and 1 to 4 family homes to be more sustainable, they're also trying to get their own buildings, city-owned buildings, to be more sustainable. And the reason why I think this is such a cool example is because the developers pretty much went ahead and implemented almost every energy conservation measure you can possibly think of. And it's actually considered like an energy efficiency laboratory where they're just experimenting to try to figure out how they can actually use the data that they're collecting from this building in order to implement it throughout the entire Department of Education system. So I spoke a little earlier about the NYC Clean Heat program, which was very successful. As you can see at the beginning of the program, most of the emissions were in Manhattan, in the Bronx, and certain areas of Queens and Brooklyn. And by the end of the program, towards the, you can see it really cleared up a lot. There are certain pockets in Manhattan and the Bronx. We know those as either environmental justice communities or communities that are lacking maybe in some kind of economic, maybe they don't have access to financing in order to do the work. But for the most part, New York City did a really good job at reducing its sulfur emissions, but we still need to do much more. So recently in 2019, we passed the Climate Mobilization Act. It's comprised of these different local laws. Local laws 92 and 94 require that roofs of certain buildings be covered in green roofs or solar photovoltaic systems. We also passed a building energy efficiency grade, which is similar to kind of the grades that you see in the restaurants. And for example, my building has a letter grade of an A. And you will start seeing that much more, all these different multifamily and commercial buildings that have letter grades. So now buildings are mandated to actually demonstrate to the world how well they're doing at actually conserving energy in their location. We also have PACE financing, which is property assessed clean energy financing, which is a specific local law that is actually creating a tool to provide funds for people to actually do this work. Whereas before people had to just go to a bank and figure it out on their own. Now there's like a local law that was created to ensure that there is money set aside specifically for these types of projects. And also local law 97 is just requiring that buildings achieve certain reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and they have to report them, and it has to be public information. The Climate Mobilization Act is actually the most aggressive greenhouse gas emission reduction policy at the moment nationwide, not just in the state of New York, but nationwide. So I talked a bit about the Climate Mobilization Act. We also have the Carbon Challenge, which is pretty much kind of a program that we have that works specifically with commercial property owners to get them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and do other types of sustainability measures in the next 10 years. And we also have the NYC Accelerator, which is a program that will be launched shortly that's helping a variety of different buildings in the 5 boroughs be able to actually do energy and water conservation work. And we're connecting them to the technical and the financing assistance that they need in order to do that. So as you can see, the NYC Accelerator is not only providing kind of like the hand holding for building owners to do this work, but also helping them with like navigating local laws, energy codes, other New York City requirements, as well as connecting them to incentives and just some of the other financing measures that are out there. Some of the program offerings are identifying retrofits to save energy and money, finding a contractor that's right for the project, reducing out-of-pocket costs through incentives and financing, and also connecting building staff with training. And one component of this program is actually building off of this Community Retrofit NYC program. It was operated actually for 3 years. It was the 3-year pilot program in Central Brooklyn, and it provided pretty much technical assistance in order for the smaller building owners to be able to actually do these types of energy projects. It was successful for the most part, but we did learn a lot about what we can do moving forward in order to get the smaller property owner, you know, people who own buildings that are 5 to 25 units, so they're really small buildings, to go above and beyond, other than just, you know, doing maybe like getting LED light bulbs from their utility, for example. So another component of the work that we do is our internship program. Is pretty much a paid professional development program. It's a collaboration with the CUNY Building Performance Lab, specifically for students that are sophomores and juniors in their bachelor's program or master's degree students that are in some kind of STEM field related to building energy efficiency. So pretty much they work with a variety of different employers in the deep energy retrofit space in order to gain experience. And they usually work there about 15 hours per week. It's been successful for the most part. It's been impacted by COVID-19, but we're slowly recovering. And we're currently looking for new employers all the time. So if that's something that you're interested in participating in, if you're a CUNY student, or if you are maybe you're working for a company that would like to take on interns through this program, feel free to contact me directly. So some of the work that the students do, as you can see here, is document the status of buildings and their critical systems, researching high performance technologies, supporting the creation of high performance retrofit plans, for example. So that's kind of a little brief overview of the work that we do over here. I'm really excited to answer all of your questions, and here's my email. Feel free to, you know, send me any questions that you may have. And I look forward to the rest of this conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Milka. That was, I feel like we work so much, like all of us, we work in this field so much. And so I'm so familiar with like all of these stats and all of these like different goals, but to hear you say things like, this is the most, you know, hard hitting like sustainability policies and initiatives nationwide, it's like great to hear. It's great to hear that New York City is taking this on head on. It's great to hear from the mayor's office that there is a component and recognition of the intersection with environmental justice and social justice, and that the city is trying to interweave that as well. So thank you so much for giving, you know, providing all this information. I also always like to remind people that a lot of the documents and sustainability plans that Milka was mentioning, this is all public information. Yeah. Because it's a city agency, it has to be public information. You can very much do your own research, look it up. It is on the mayor's office website itself. So, you know, if you're interested in learning more, then we can do like in the next like 30, 40 minutes. I do welcome everyone to very much look information up for themselves. So Milka, if you can just stop sharing your screen, because now what we're going to do is we're going to take all this information that we just learned with Milka, and we're going to see how these, very ambitious goals that we have, how is that being applied to our Department of Education here in New York City. And as a reminder to everyone, New York City has the largest educational system in the country. So it is very significant, and the Department of Education plays a very important role in helping New York City become more sustainable and achieve all of these policies and goals that Milka just laid out. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Christine, for another little 10-15 minute background information, and then we're going to come back all together to kind of answer a few questions, have a little bit more of a discussion. And then, again, if anyone has any questions, please write them in the Q&A section, and we're going to try to get to them after Christine's presentation right now.
All right. Can you hear me fine? Okay, very good. Well, excellent intro there, and sort of like teed up a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today. Again, I'm Christine Johnson. I work in the New York City Department of Education's Office of Sustainability. We are one of the largest city agencies, and therefore our contribution to the major goals that Milka spoke about is very significant. And I'm going to sort of go through how that all plays out in a really quick snapshot, but I look forward to opening up the dialogue to address your questions and share a bit more as we talk more today. So, all right. So as Milka laid out, the city has really ambitious goals, which are incredibly exciting, and they each have really, really critical purposes. Local Law 84 was our benchmarking mandate. So since 2016, we've been measuring our energy consumption in our buildings so that we can really ultimately track and do comparisons year over year. So if we don't measure where we are, then we don't have a really good ability to measure where we're going and track against that. So tracking is a critical piece that was put in place with Local Law 84. And then Local Law 33, which was modified by Local Law 95 in 2019, is the energy efficiency grades. And so that requires all municipal buildings and city buildings to post their energy grades, which increases awareness of energy consumption and just awareness in general of where our energy scores are at and the opportunity that presents. And then Local Law 97 focuses in on the emissions reductions regulations set for buildings in New York City. So the overarching targets that were set that are creating significant action that I'm going to go into in the next few slides is ultimately there's an interim target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 40% by 2030. So we're setting a midterm target, and then 80% by 2050, ultimately contributing to a carbon neutral economy. So we've got milestones in front of us here, and the DOE is a big part of that. So as you can see on this slide, we at the New York City Department of Education, as the largest school system in the country, serving 1.1 million students, we consume a quarter of New York City's energy budget. So we are a big monster consuming energy, and thus a really big opportunity for improvement. And based on a lot of preliminary analysis, like on the left-hand side of the screen, it shows sort of the breakdowns of our preliminary analysis related to what grades our buildings are going to have. And so we can see that we have a lot of room for improvement there. And on the right-hand side of the screen, what we've done is use that, like our analysis of data that we have available to figure out what energy conservation measures give us the best return on investment. And when I mean return on investment, we're talking about the best investments we can make to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the number of emissions reduced per dollar spent. And as you can see, the highlighted in green are the top 10. And if you zero in on the top 5, solar PV consistently, when we run analysis, shows up in the top 5 as a top opportunity that we can make and take an actionable step that we can implement in order to start to improve our buildings across the city. In New York City's Department of Education, we have nearly we serve 1.1 million students in over 1,400 buildings. So we have a lot of buildings and thus a lot of real estate that's consuming a ton of energy. So at this point, we are really focused, we're working on quite a variety of energy conservation measures that were highlighted in that last slide, but solar is the one that I'm personally leading, and as I said earlier, is having a significant impact on greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So we've got nearly 50 schools that already have solar installed on them, and we've got more than 200 projects in the pipeline. And those projects are already in a variety of stages of design and permitting. So those will be moving into construction. So in the very near term, we're going to have 250 to 300 schools across the city that have solar on them, and that will really, really significantly reduce our dependence on the burning of fossil fuels within our city and improve grid resiliency and air quality. There's a lot of ripple effects of these decisions. And so we see the installation of solar, as a commitment for the larger benefit of the city. We've got a lot of goals set. Sort of a subcomponent of these goals is Local Law 24, which established the city's commitment to installing 100 megawatts of solar on city-owned buildings by 2025. And most of those installations are going on schools. So this is a snapshot of the program that I have the privilege of leading for the DOE, the NYC Solar Schools program. And it was really catalyzed by the top image of installing solar on schools. So we started with installing solar on schools, and we realized very quickly that these local real projects could be a catalyst for education. So we started working very closely with Solar One, our partner on this, the leader on this call, to develop teacher professional development. So we have developed programs where we help teachers deliver clean energy content that is standard aligned, so that students learn about clean energy, energy conservation, and climate change in the classroom. So informing them with knowledge. And then we expanded that program even further to a career and technical education program where we work with Solar One to do direct delivery of solar education content, starting with solar photovoltaic theory, design, and hands-on installation in the classroom with CTE or career and technical education students that are already studying electrical and engineering tracks. So we're giving them an additional layer of knowledge in one of the fastest growing industries in the country. So solar installer is a very, very fast growing and well-paying job opportunity out there. So it is something to think about. We have to really be realistic that not everybody's going to go to college, but there are jobs like solar installer that are on demand and really well-paying. And so we want to provide that opportunity for and to our students. And ultimately, as part of this our overall program, we have been able to line those students up with internships with our installers. And ultimately, we've had DOE students install solar on our schools, which is a really rare opportunity that we've been able to execute, and certainly something that we're looking to expand year over year. So giving students actual hard skills on how to install solar really creates something they can put on their resumes, as well as very quickly roll right into career opportunities. So we've already got 13 career and technical education high schools participating throughout the city. With the help of Solar One, we've reached over 1,000 students to date. And as you can see from the quote, this is resonating with students. And it's really sort of rethinking their thoughts on how they can participate in our energy future. And as we all know, it needs to be a clean energy and ultimately a carbon neutral energy future. So a lot of empowerment and skill development. And like I said earlier, we're getting those students paid internships. Like obviously the opportunities presented to the students that choose to pursue it have an incredible opportunity. We have 4 students represented in this photo who helped install solar on more than 4 schools last summer, not this past summer, but the prior summer. So really, really exciting that we can have our students have such empowerment and actually physically change their environment of their communities. So we had that opportunity, and we look forward to creating that opportunity for more and more of our students, and really increasing the student voice in the decisions we're making at the DOE. We have a youth leadership council that we regularly engage with, and they help inform a lot of our decisions. They're incredibly powerful and impactful group. So, like like every day we're working to install solar, but one of the coolest things about this is that we're using those actual projects to inform and empower the next generation so that they can move the needle when it's their time. So that sort of rounds out a quick overview of the program that I lead. There's much more to it, but that gives you a quick snapshot. And you can always contact me, and my information's right there. So that wraps it up, and I'll hand it back to you, Amy.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Christine. Thank you, Milka, for this background information. So these were just very quick, background information that these 2 panelists provided. As well, if you're interested in learning more about the Solar Schools program, for example, we're also going to be, in the emails we're going to send all the attendees, we will also be adding all social media links and everything, and websites as well, in case you want to learn more about both of these city agencies and the work that each of them are participating in. But to kind of start off our conversation, and this was a question from our audience members, we have a lot of students who are watching us and joining us today. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the role of youth and the role of students. So Christine, you working in the Department of Education, you did, very much mention that, but I did want to go back to some of the work that Milka has done, because it's interesting that both of you work with education, but with different age groups, essentially. So Christine working more with the typical K through 12 education in the city, and then Milka working with college students. And so I would love to hear from both of you about what you believe the role of youth are in kind of, and the role of your agencies in helping develop like this pipeline of not just educating students, but also, like you were saying, Christine, like there is a workforce development component for both of your agencies. Different age groups, but with the goal of helping students not only learn more about sustainability and environmental issues and all of that, but also to learn more about careers, career exploration, and to set these students up for success for possible, green careers. Like Christine said, these are very well-paying jobs. These are jobs that are in demand, and they are definitely options for our city youth. So I would love just to hear more from both of you of kind of how you see your organizations helping, drive more students into green careers, and, the importance of that. I don't know who would want.
So I can go first. So pretty much the internship program came as a response to a market gap. And that market gap was pretty much that a lot of employers, there was kind of like a survey that was done to all these different employers in the energy sector. They mentioned that there were a lot of students that were graduating, coming in as an architect, as an engineer, etc. And even though they had a good grasp of like the technicalities of architecture and engineering, they didn't really understand the sustainability component to that, because maybe sometimes it just wasn't being taught to them in the classes. So the internship program came as a response to that. And so that's why we delivered 35 hours of training on building science concepts, a variety of different things like cost estimating for different types of energy conservation projects, how helping them determine how to reduce energy consumption or water consumption by maybe installing a variety of different energy, or not energy, but like building technologies. So the training is it goes in depth into like a variety of different calculations, building technologies, also how to do tenant education, and also like New York City energy policies, for example. It's mostly based on building energy efficiency, but most recently we've seen how some students can actually apply that towards like other aspects, such as maybe like waste management, which was kind of interesting. So yeah, the program is geared at students that are college level, specifically in the CUNY system. And CUNY is a system. It's not an Ivy League system. It's pretty much trying to make the information accessible to like the everyday New Yorker. It's a way to try to get students into the doors, getting these internships in companies that they may not normally have access to. There is a difficulty for students, especially students of color, to enter this sector, to not only enter the sector, but be able to actually stay in the sector. There's a lot of challenges. And I think that we provide them with training and also assistance and other things like resume writing, interviewing. Those are mandatory components of the internship program as well. They need to go and have someone review the resume, do a few trial interviews, and then we kind of get a report back. But that's pretty much kind of like where we're at. And we do check in with the student, while they're doing the internship and also afterwards, and we track them to see after doing this internship training, or if they went ahead and actually did the internship as well, did they go ahead and do a master's degree in sustainability? Did they take on more sustainability related courses in their bachelor's degree program? Did they do a fellowship or another internship, or maybe apply for a scholarship? Are they now in a volunteer group on campus, or some other kind of initiative related to sustainability? So we want to see how exactly the program is impacting the student after they go through it. So yeah, there are times where there are students who are not placed in internships because they don't have enough experience, but we always tell them that, they can try for the next cohort, and we will always try to, keep reconnecting with our students that have been through the program to see if we can, have them access some of these opportunities.
Great, thank you, Milka. And for anyone asking questions about this internship, I'll be sure to give everyone the website link and everything that provides more information. Those internships, as a reminder, those are only open for CUNY students, right? So yeah, that's limited, to CUNY college students. You have to be a sophomore or a junior, I believe you said.
Well, we've also seen like freshmen do it, but usually because they have so little experience, they don't get like placed in an internship, but at least they have the training on their resume that they can say they actually went through a 35-hour training in sustainability. And I mean, as a freshman or sophomore, you need, all the training you can get. And I would say that it's really great for people who are starting out, because right now, given how much COVID-19 has impacted the economy, I think that students that are like in that sector or aspiring to someday enter that sector, they really need to beef up their resumes in order to be competitive in the economy that we're in. It's one of the worst economies since like, I don't know, like the Great Recession or something like that. Okay. So you need all the training you can get. You need to beef up your resume. Do not shy away from any training that may be in your field or outside of your field, because you need to demonstrate to people that you're well-rounded and that you can take on a variety of different work.
Yeah, and that's a really good segue into what I'd like to share is it's never too early to start working on your training and your skills. And so at the DOE, that is a lot of what's driving our focus. We have heard from numerous instructors, students, and industry partners that we need to see students, we need to see students with more skills, especially if we're talking about technical skills that they need in order to immediately move into technical careers and or put that on their college applications as actual experience. So it's not just, like I said earlier, is we also have to think of the fact that not all of our students are going to have the privilege of going to college. Some students need to immediately start supporting their families. So we need to think about how do we give those students skills where they can roll right into the workforce with well-paid, like a livable wage, right? We really need livable wages in this world. And where they can actually support their families or even just themselves. And they have actual certifications. So as part of our program, we're expanding it to where students are actually graduating with professional certifications that sometimes individuals don't have until after college. So we're working with our students to actually develop hard skills, so actionable skills, like they've actually done this work and they can put that on their resume, and they have certifications such as OSHA certifications for actually doing this work in construction, and then professional certifications from industry standards or industry, industry standards across the city, not the city, across the country, sorry. So we're really working on that. And then the other thing is that, like I alluded to this earlier, is that whatever skills you can develop in high school only push you further. So on your college application, now you already reflect that you've learned and been trained in very specific ways, which will give you, like a little step ahead of your competition in college, and help you land jobs maybe as a freshman, right? If you had all of these skill developments in high school and you do have the opportunity to go to college, now you can reflect that, hey, I've already interned installing solar on schools. I've learned solar photovoltaic theory and hands-on installation in paid internships. That's really very powerful. And it also shows initiative. It says, I'm a go-getter. I'm going to go develop these skills. I want these skills. And I want to be a valuable asset, and that makes you very, very employable. So that's a lot of what we're working on on the high school level, and even earlier with our teacher professional development is really to get the the students' minds engaged in the impacts of climate change, but the power that youth actually has. Not just the power. Like, I believe that we, speaking here, have a huge responsibility to do all we can to move the needle on climate change, but also use what we're doing as a tool to empower the next generation and use it as a training ground and skill development area, so that students can take it even further when it's their time, because they're very well aware of it and aware of what actionable steps they can take, right? We don't want people walking away with like it's doomsday, right? We don't have a chance. I believe we wholly have a chance, and I believe that we have to do a lot, and the next generation, they already know they have a lot to do. And so these are the type of programs that help them be powerful in making those changes. So, sorry, long.
Yes, thank you. No, I very much agree with that. I mean, us at Solar One, we work very closely both with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and also with the New York City Department of Education's Office of Sustainability. And so much of what we teach, we teach anywhere from third grade all the way through high school, and teachers and everything. And I think it's so important, we're talking about these sustainability goals, and a lot of them have this time period associated with it of like 2030 or 2040 or 2050. And to really young students, that can seem like a lifetime away. But it's not. I mean, 2050s in 30 years, it's not a very long time. And so, like Christine was saying, it's never too early to start, even just learning about these things, because if you plan to continue living or working, studying in our city, you're going to be noticing a lot of changes happening. a lot of changes that are already happening. A lot of lifestyles and the way that our city functions is going to be changing. And so it's great to just have a better understanding of why these changes are happening, what's the plan essentially, and what role do New Yorkers play as like a resident, what role do we play as students, what role do we play, in whatever profession you go on to join in the future. I think that it's all very much interconnected. And even if these sustainability initiatives and goals in the year 2050 seem not relevant right now because they're so far away, things are happening like right now. And a lot of these policies and initiatives passed within like the last 2 years. So yes, just to kind of go to a couple of questions that I just want to address from the Q&A from our audience. So both of these questions are more geared towards, well, one is geared more towards Christine with the Department of Education. So one of our audience members asked about charter schools. And so kind of what role, and this can just be like a quick answer, what role do charter schools play within the programs and kind of like the energy budget that you talked about? And are charter schools under that umbrella, or are they excluded according to like city calculations?
It depends on the buildings that they occupy, but in general, if New York City public school students, even if they're at a charter school, if they're being served, it needs to be part of the calculation. So it's really a broader swath of understanding that. Some of the semantics related to buildings and what those buildings fall under, like in how they're classified and different things like that can fluctuate a few of those things. But if there's like DOE involvement, then it is calculated into it.
Great. And then our next question from our audience was regarding green roofs. And so I think that's a great, I think it was mentioned in like part of the Climate Mobilization Act that Milka talked about was, basically having green roofs and having more green roofs on new construction. But we did talk a lot about solar. So, and solar energy is a very big initiative that's happening here in the city with the installation of solar. And that's what Christine's program does. And that's the work that we do at Solar One. But I would love to hear more, Milka, about green roofs essentially, and how are they hopefully growing in popularity? How is that playing out? Because I hear more about, with me and like who I surround myself with, I hear more about solar than I do about green roofs. So I myself would like to just learn a little bit more about how that's being implemented as a sustainability strategy in the city.
Yeah, so in terms of green roofs, pretty much, like you said, there's a lot more funding, for example, for like photovoltaic panels. But there are a lot of green roofs that are being implemented specifically by schools or even by like nonprofit affordable housing developers in order to engage their tenants around the concept of sustainability. So, there is some work around that, but I think that that is an area that needs to grow much more in New York City. There needs to be more kind of like support for that as well. Green roofing companies, the ones who just kind of like put vegetation, not necessarily like photovoltaic panels, they don't always necessarily like make a lot of money, or they don't have a very broad clientele. It's usually like a clientele that can actually pay for those things. So when it is being done in like, I would say like lower income areas, it's usually as a result of like a nonprofit affordable housing developer that, has actually hired a sustainability person to implement a green roof, in their portfolio of buildings, or it may be like co-op owners who want to have a green roof on their property. But there definitely needs to be more support for green roofs, I would say. Specifically. In terms of like photovoltaic panels, we actually now have received funding for a solar accelerator. And we also, I think the solar accelerator is going to be predominantly for 1 to 4 family homes in Staten Island and I think it was Queens. So that's something to look forward to, that there is going to be more funding out there to have more solar panels. I think it's been left a lot up to like the smaller solar companies, but now the city's taking this initiative to actually have this kind of program available, kind of like a central hub for solar panel installation for that specific niche. But yeah, in terms of green roofs are a really great idea, but like I said, they require a lot of maintenance, and I think that there needs to be more support for green roof installers. The salaries are not very good. Same thing with solar panel installers. The salaries are not, like very, very, very good. So it's good as an entry level job, and I would definitely consider to recommend it for people who want to enter the field, and then they can build upon that experience and move on to maybe another aspect of building energy efficiency or start their own solar company. We've seen some, nonprofits who started their own solar companies. I know that We Act for Environmental Justice is actually a nonprofit based in Harlem who recently they launched their LLC, and it's a solar co-op, and it was pretty much all these people that they had trained on like building energy efficiency, and they went out to the real world to get jobs, and they realized that those jobs didn't pay that well. So they decided to come back, regroup, unite, and create their own company so that they can now install solar. So, you can get creative with the green field as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in. I also lead the collaboration with the Department of Environmental Protection on the review of several of our schools for green roof installation, and that would be retrofitting existing roofs with green roof. One of the larger challenges around green roofs is how much heavier they are than solar, right? So solar weighs about 6 to 8 pounds per square foot, and on the lighter end, green roofs weigh about 20 pounds per square foot, and that's on the lighter end. So really big differences in structural demand, which is not to say, which is not to say that it's not something that we need to continue to review. And we work very closely and collaborate closely with the School Construction Authority, who will have to work out some of the details around Local Law 92 and 94, which is for new construction, whether they install solar or green roof on usable areas. So we are studying some existing buildings for opportunities, and also engaged in collaboration with SCA on looking forward, especially as we start to think about ways we need to mitigate stormwater runoff as our city has so much impermeable surface throughout it. So just wanted to share that at the DOE we are involved in that, and obviously if the roof is able to be occupied and a green roof, how incredible is that we now have an extended education environment that has hands-on and tangible greenery, which is very restorative and valuable for education environments.
Yes, thank you so much for both of your perspectives on that topic. So I have one final kind of wrap-up question just to kind of summarize everything and lead us off for the end of our webinar. And that is to kind of talk about, we all work in this industry. We ourselves are very familiar with these policies and these laws and the science behind them and all. And like I said before, this is all public information, but how can we, and it doesn't have to be our agencies that we work with, but like how can we as a society just be better at communicating and making this information more accessible in a way? How can we better include and involve different parties that are impacted by greenhouse gas emissions, that are impacted by the installation of more solar, the installation of more green roofs, different CTE, career and technical schools in our city that offer these programs that Christine was talking about? How can we kind of involve other people who don't consider themselves experts in the field or even interested in this field at all? So how can we kind of bridge that disconnect that exists where all this information and this is all happening, but so many of our residents here in the city are just don't know all the amazing things that are going on.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we talk a lot about in the mayor's office. I think it's, we need to get the information out to a variety of different cultural groups. So, accessing, media channels that people are already tapping into, such as BET, for example, or Univision, Telemundo, Galavisión, all these different channels that are geared at different types of ethnicities. We need to have people on there, talking about these initiatives. And there is space in all of those channels, whether it's through the news or maybe talk shows, for example, to actually deliver that information to the demographic that normally don't have access or that don't hear about it. So when people do hear about solar panels on the news, it's about a scam. They hear about how someone got scammed, how they had solar panels installed on their house. The solar panels fell off, it ripped their roof, it shredded the roof. And so it's like when people do hear about some of the projects, it's negative news, it's not positive news. But if you have people from the community getting onto these media channels, speaking positively about it, then we can change the rhetoric and we can change people's impression of these sustainability initiatives. And I think that's what we need to do is more like multicultural marketing, for example, and, kind of like what Christine, Department of Education is doing and the mayor's office, more internships. I actually learned about the sustainability field through an internship at Central Park Conservancy back when I was in high school, back in like 2004, 2005. So, I didn't know people did ecological restoration. I didn't know people what that was. And that's how I started. And I liked it so much and I just kind of kept going with it. So I think we just need to have these type of programs, immersion programs, where students can actually, have the opportunity to at least reject it. But, when we live in a world where certain people don't even get the opportunity to reject these opportunities, to reject these kinds of programs or whatever, that's a problem. So I think everybody should have the right to approve and reject things, and everybody has the right to hear about it. It should be part of their news, not just killings and the stock market and the weather. We also need to have these other things going on,
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly, exactly the starting point is like, how do we break down perceived, existing barriers and perceived barriers? Because unfortunately, sometimes we create an understanding that, oh, that's not for me. But if we knew more about it, we could be engaged, and it could truly be an opportunity for ourselves. And what this call itself represents, and some of the greatest success we've been able to have at the New York City Department of Education's Office of Sustainability has come from building partnerships, right? So our partnership with Solar One is one of the most powerful things that we have to reach educators who deliver the content in the classroom. So that's like a ripple effect, right? So Solar One delivers content to teachers, and then teachers deliver content in their classrooms to numerous students. And so partnerships is one of the most valuable ways that we've found to really expand our reach. And the partner we mentioned earlier, WeAct has become a really incredible partner. And what we want to do is continue to foster relationships with them where there's the potential of maybe students coming out of our internship program are the right fit for a program as adult learners with WeAct, right? So it's all about expanding those partnerships to reach broader and broader audiences. And, like one of the things that we don't always have the luxury of doing at the DOE because we're so busy doing the work is just expanding outreach, right? So this is an incredible opportunity to reach new audiences. So outreach is a huge piece, and I know the mayor's office, Milka, and your team is continuously working on outreach and meeting and engaging new audiences in this. So it's really getting the information out there and also using those partnerships to just really broaden that reach and bring way more people from every single background, every single income level into the conversation and grow their understanding, and hopefully create actual opportunities where they can be part of the actionable steps to change their environment, and then through that potentially their employment opportunities as well. So it can be full circle with all that. So.
Yes, very, very well said, both of you. Thank you all so much. I think that's a beautiful way to end our webinar and our conversation for today. So thank you both so much, Christine and Milka, for taking the time to join us today for this conversation. Thank you everyone who attended, all of our attendees. Thank you for your questions. I do apologize if we did not get to answer your question during our time here. So we will be sending you out a recording of this webinar. We will also be sending you information about all the internships that were mentioned today. We'll be providing social media handles for both of these organizations and city agencies, and so that you can learn more about them, follow them, so you can also inform yourself about all upcoming events or just happenings that are, what's going on in our city in terms of sustainability. So thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Alex, as well, for joining and for handling our chat. So I look forward to hopefully having more webinars. We do, us at Solar One, this is part of our webinar series, so we do have an additional webinar planned. Our next one is on December 21st, so you can keep an eye out for that. If you want to stay up to date with us, you can also follow us on Instagram at Solar One Green Design Lab. So thank you everyone for today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night. So,
thanks everyone. Thank you so much. Take good care.